Today's opportunity is to introduce you to Kjartan. One of the benefits of COVID, if one can have a benefit, has been the development of the Forum, rather grandly called Forum TV program. And when putting that together, the digital program that is, over the last 12 months or so, 18 months perhaps, it was suddenly an answer to my prayers, because within the Forum membership, there are so many experts and principals across so many different sectors. And I was beginning to think with the breakfast programs, you know, one's inviting keynote speakers in, and that's tremendous, and one continues to do that. But also that sense of he speaks or she speaks and we listen, when you're aware that in the audience itself are the people who really know what's going on. And suddenly, so Forum TV gave me this opportunity to actually get the Forum members and their expertise above the parapet, if you like, and to talk to the membership about who they are, what they do, etc., etc. And again, another opportunity for people just quietly and unobtrusively to explain who they are, what the value is that they bring to Forum, and where other Forum members might benefit from that. And so very much in the guise of that, Kjartan is speaking to us today from his VC perspective in the European tech world. Next month, we have Russell Van Praag, who is a lawyer at Osborne Clarke, talking about the legal profession, the frustrations that he experiences with clients and vice versa. But again, another opportunity just to demonstrate that, that level of experience that we have, if you like. So in talking to Kjartan, we came up with the title of It's Not Easy to Be an Entrepreneur. And this is because Concentric is the company that Kjartan co-founded with Dennis Shafranek there, who's a long, I won't say old Dennis, I'll say long-standing member of Forum. And there are one or two other members from Concentric here today as well. And they have built this very successful venture capital business. They see themselves, if I may say so, and I know this to be true because obviously I've known you for a long time, as they work very, very closely with their entrepreneurs. And so when they invest, they're right alongside helping build those businesses. I think you have 23 businesses from my count on your website yesterday that you're currently invested in and growing, of course, across Europe and specifically in the tech sector. So that's the background on Concentric, and they've been great friends to Forum, and they're a very successful company. So, but what we want to do is not specifically talk about Concentric today, but we want to talk about the entrepreneur. Now, the good thing is that in this room, there are lots of older guys, and I count myself in that bracket, and there are some younger guys and girls, founders, if you like, who are on the path of an entrepreneurial career at the moment. So we want to try and understand, you know, what is the mindset of that person who sets out to be an entrepreneur, and what differentiates them. So, Kjartan, I'm going to give you the and a microphone that works. There we go. Use that as well, please. So what differentiates?
Is this one on?
What differentiates the entrepreneur? What do you look for when you
Yeah, first and foremost, being an entrepreneur is hard. I think the media and our surroundings today is somewhat romanticizing the journey an entrepreneur is on. I just had a discussion here before we kicked off with a gentleman over there, and he's just started a journey. He's just about to have a baby, and now he's thinking, am I doing the right thing? But on your question, what is it like to be an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is typically a visionary. It's typically someone who wants to change the way we do things. He wants to make an impact. He wants to have some sort of a impact on the world, and some of the most ambitious ones, they want to create a legacy. But the journey is hard. It is a lonely job. You're always having you're questioning yourself, you're questioning the surroundings, you have to satisfy stakeholders, you have to satisfy, not least, investors. If you have problems, and particularly if you're a single founder or entrepreneur, who is there? Maybe your wife, maybe your friends, but nevertheless, it's a very lonely job. So we have the utmost respect for the entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur is our hero. I mean, we're just the money man. But we need to make sure we get the right entrepreneur in order to be able to build the right companies that can also, we can generate a return from.
So so you're seeing, I think it is working. So you're seeing a lot of individuals. So even though it would be unspoken necessarily, perhaps spoken between you and Dennis, what are your shortcuts in terms of looking at that individual, be it, you know, male, female, younger, older? What are you looking for? You know, what questions do you ask to get to the point that satisfies you that you're talking to somebody who has a chance of making their business work?
So entrepreneurs, they come in all shapes and sizes, different ages, different backgrounds. We're probably not good enough at capturing entrepreneurs who come from maybe social classes or, you know, upbringing where is very far from where we typically look. So that way we need to improve. But what are we looking for? We typically spend time with entrepreneurs. It's a lengthy period of time before we invest in order to get to know the entrepreneur. And through that time, we look at different traits, how that person behaves, how he treats other people, how he communicates. Or I have to say he or she communicates, because it's not a predominant just for men.
As a matter of interest, what is the proportion of male founders to female founders in which you have invested?
Yeah, I would say 5% are female.
Okay,
and it's not for lack of trying. But let's go back to your original question. So what we're looking for in the entrepreneur is the ability to communicate what he or she does, the ability to sell, and by selling, it's not only selling the product, but it's also selling to people he or she wants to recruit. It's also selling to investors, because he's convincing us to basically back him, and is also having the ability to be resilient when times are tough. Don't give up. Use that extra power you have, and also reach out to us. We are there to support, but we need to understand there is a suffering, or there is a problem there. So the many traits we're looking for prior to investing, that will hopefully give us some more surety that he or she will succeed as an entrepreneur.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And do you back the jockey or the horse?
I would say in 99 out of 100 times, we'll back the jockey. Yeah. We can communicate with a jockey. We can't communicate with a horse unless we have some particular skills and a horse whisperer or something. But to transform that from your metaphor into our world, I would rather back a great entrepreneur with an average product than a poor entrepreneur with a great product. Because a great entrepreneur will always find a way. He will pivot, he will add, he will develop, and he will fix in order to make the product work. Yes, I mean that is also that's part of what I'm trying to say. You will always find a way. While if you back the horse and the jockey is really poor.
What if the horse is really good?
And that's why I said 99 of 100 times we'll back the jockey.
Yes.
But maybe in the 100th time is
what do you do then?
What's it called? What's that, Rock of Gibraltar? Is that what it's called? The famous racehorse. Maybe
yes.
Rock of Gibraltar. Maybe that one, we probably would have backed that one. And then make sure that we train the jockey along the way.
Or bring another jockey in, maybe.
Or maybe bring another jockey in.
Okay, so by the way, please put up your hands and ask questions as we go along. Obviously, we'll come to questions towards the end as well. And that goes for all of you who are tuning in. If you put into the chat box any question, Cam will let me know and we'll come to that. So please be involved. I'd like to talk about the old days and today. So I've never had a proper job, as my mother would say. And back in the day, and we are talking really quite a long time ago, not quite as long as you, David, but not far off. So I'm talking 40 years ago, I started my first business. And first of all, there was a lot of skepticism within my own peer group, like, oh, he's just skiving. Why isn't he going into the city, or why isn't he doing this, or why isn't he doing that? He's obviously just, he's just playing around. So the idea of being, and you never use the word entrepreneur, that was far too pretentious. You'd never have used that word. You'd just say, I'm building a business or what have you. But the building of a business was, there was no computer, there was no mobile phone, there was no fax. That became very exciting when the fax came in. And so it was really sitting with a copy of the Yellow Pages and working out, how can I build a business? And then when I came up with my first idea, I printed 5,000 leaflets and, got those delivered into the businesses in the West End and what have you. And that's how I started a business. And then, of course, you go and talk to the bank manager in the sort of corner of Battersea High Road, and he gives you a loan. And it was completely different. But I never stopped to think about it. It just seemed to me to be the way forward and the right thing to do. Now I look at today, and obviously phenomenally different in terms, particularly in the last 20 years, in that you can have that website built overnight and you can be reaching out across the world. But I don't know it's necessarily any easier. So I would like to just ask you what your comparisons are now between how things used to be and how they are today.
Yeah, a number of questions there. We almost go as far back as when Tottenham was successful. So I just had to get that in. Being an entrepreneur has sort of changed, sort of perception. Gone are the days when parents are expecting you to turn up after graduation and you say, I want to be a lawyer, or I want to go and work for one of the high street banks. There's a study at Oxford University in 2005. So 60–70% of the students, they want to go to work for Goldman Sachs and McKinsey and MI5, etc., and some of the other gold-branded names. 2% wanted to become entrepreneurs and start their own company. The same study was done just before lockdown, and 60% of the students on this particular course wanted to become entrepreneurs. So that just shows a change in mentality, not just in the UK, but in Europe. I mean, US is a completely different ballgame because entrepreneurship has been recognized as a profession there for decades or centuries.
And you're allowed to in the US, whereas I think perhaps that culture is changing here, but of course you weren't allowed to fail before, which is why a lot of people didn't start.
Yeah, and you're allowed to fail, and failure brings experience, and when you start over again. Not only that, entrepreneurs have been celebrated in the US. While in Europe, it hasn't been the case. I always use this example. So if someone in the US has a great exit, they go into the country club and the whole of the country club will buy drinks for the entrepreneur. The European entrepreneur, he basically sells his company, goes into his country club, whatever the equivalent we have in Europe. He is expected to buy drinks for everyone in the country club. So that sort of sums up the difference between US and Europe. But we are improving, and part of that is that we are starting to have these leading lights in Europe. We're starting to see entrepreneurs that are succeeding in Europe. So they in the US they talk about the PayPal mafia. So that has brought Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, the guys, Reid Hoffman, etc. And in Europe now, we're starting to have the Skype mafia. We're starting to have the Zalando mafia. We're starting to have the Spotify mafia. And that metaphor is just a way of saying these people have made money. They're putting money into the next generation of entrepreneurs, and they're also putting skills and knowledge in them. In terms of the way, sorry, initial question was whether it's easier or harder.
Maybe it's just different.
It's different, but you know, the entrepreneur today, he also have not only the perception of entrepreneurship has changed, the access to the tools and the digitalization they have. So they can access service on a tap. They can access other development tools and software tools on a tap. So that is easy. Access to financing is easier today, and also the fact that you can talk to and recruit people without having to explain how dangerous this is. That is also a great advantage. But I mean, the fact that there is more people becoming entrepreneurs are becoming more competitive, and people are competing for scarce resources, particularly people today.
Yeah, I mean, you know, having lived a life myself of, you know, you eat what you kill. I get very excited about the fact that this younger generation, I have my children in their 20s, are so entrepreneurial. I just think, you know, and that is their natural thought process, and I just think that's fantastic. I'm really, really happy about that. I want to move on back to Concentric and you and Dennis, and ask you, the founder that you do not invest in, how do you manage that disappointment? And do you tell that person that he or she is not actually an entrepreneur? They've just got an idea, but they haven't got what it takes to take it all the way through. That's a hard question to ask, but you know, at what point do you say to someone candidly, look, you know, it's been nice to meet you, but I think you should give up this idea, and I think perhaps you want to think about doing something else. Do you ever give that kind of advice?
Just killing the dream, eh?
I didn't put this question on your notes yesterday.
No. What I think is the hardest thing we do in our profession, and it's particularly hard for the younger next generation of venture capitalists joining, is the fact that we say no, 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 no. It's like having a 2-year-old running around and you deny that person to do anything he or she wants to do. But that is the hardest thing when you start off here, because give you an indication. So we get 2,000-3,000 proposals or business plans or requests for funding per year.
2,000 to 3,000.
Yeah, and we invest into 6 to 8 companies.
So that's a lot of no's.
So there's not many yeses there. But we go through a process, and what is really hard for us is we can't give qualified feedback on 3,000 business plans.
So what about who just missed out? Well, of course, if they've just missed out, then you do actually believe in them.
Okay, so there's a filtering process. So I would say that we spend time on 200 companies, desktop research, and we in-depth research on 25, 30 in a year. And let's say those 200, we try to give some qualified feedback, but we also try to do it because we are relying on the best deal flow. We're relying on people like in this forum, remembering us. When they meet an entrepreneur, they should give us a tip or refer them to us. So we also need to make sure that we build our brand, we build our reputation. So what we're always trying to do when we say no, we give some feedback, we leave them with a nugget. That could be an introduction to someone they can sell to, or someone they can work with, or someone that can give them further advice. And that doesn't take much from us. That takes 2 minutes to do. And in that way, they're remembering us. Okay, they said no, but they left us with some hope. And then there are the ones where, oh, why are we spending time doing this? we're trying to be very polite when we say or provide that feedback. Me more than Dennis probably, but we have to be honest as well, because that is the way we're gonna reach the furthest. Yeah, and then you have the companies where we talked about the entrepreneur previously, and I'll cite a recent example. It was like a risk management tool for infrastructure projects. So we had two calls with them. This is Corona time, so we didn't manage to meet face to face. So 2 calls with them. Both calls, the entrepreneur was 15 minutes late. The entrepreneur then proceeded to say, we are lucky to speak to him, because normally he just speaks to the Silicon Valley firms. And we really liked the company. And we really
looking forward to hearing what Dennis's response to that was.
And then we just can't work with that type of person. Even impressed with the traction and the company, I can't see myself in a boardroom with that person, because we're just gonna fall out. And then it's that honest feedback is, thanks for the time, but we're not proceeding.
Okay, fine. And so when you do proceed, well, I am asking you about Concentric, obviously, but just the VC sector as a whole. You know, how good are you as a whole at striking the fair deal? You know, and where does the fair deal sit in terms of the? I've got the entrepreneur's back here.
Very, very difficult.
So actually, I hadn't thought about this, but my first company, I got investment from 3i, and it was an appalling experience, because I was excited to start with that somebody, I was rather flattered that this institution were in the first place talking to me, in the second place wanting to invest. It took forever. The ultimate, and remember this was 40 years ago, the ultimate money that I received was nowhere near what had originally been promised, but I was so far down the track, and I'd spent money with lawyers and all this sort of stuff, but eventually I took it. I pretty much had about tuppence left after the lawyers' bills from the amount that they had in the end invested. And it was a terrible experience. And then I had them on my back the whole time, wanting reports on a monthly basis and this and that. And I thought, well, you contributed to me absolutely nothing, but I'm contracted to you to do all of this for tuppence. And it wasn't a fair deal.
I think the industry has changed, and it had to change. I think gone are the days when the investors, the venture capitalists, including 3i, could run around with a chip on their shoulder and basically demand stuff from the entrepreneur, because it's not a healthy relationship and it's not a partnership. That brings me on to your question. What is a fair deal? When we back companies that has a great team in place, they have a product, and they have figured out that there is an addressable market and an international market. So a lot of what we invest into is the fact that they have prospects, they have a future. So we need to find the balance, because we can't value the company on pure public company comps or metrics, if you want. So we need to find a balance, and that balance we find through a dialogue with the entrepreneur. We're not looking to lowball it. That may not be fair. And at the same time, we also need to, through dialogue with the entrepreneur, if they're aiming for too high a valuation or structure, that might not benefit them for the future routes. And also avoiding having too many complicated terms and conditions in the documentation that will just make life not just hard for the entrepreneur, but also for ourselves going forward. So those are some of the things that we take into, and we're going through a couple of those scenarios at the moment, because when you start the process, you have polarized opinions. Both sides, as a human being, you want to maximize your position, but maximizing your position is not always good for the future welfare of the company, if you want.
Yeah, so that's some of the experience that you bring, obviously, to the founder. That's good. So I'm going to ask some questions in a moment. I'm just going to finish, just to see some hands going up, which is great, but just finish by coming back to that mindset again and asking you, and I want to talk to one or two of the people here who built successful businesses, but, what are the three, for the younger guys in the room who are starting their businesses, what are the three tips, if you like, that you would put to them? Or to put it another way around, when you're working with your founders, what are the three things that you keep them focused on to ensure that the business succeeds?
It's not. I'm not going to come up with anything that's rocket science here, but you gotta have a market. There's no point developing mobile internet services in 2005 when the iPhone was launched in 2007, and that market needs to have a size that you can actually build a significant business out of it. So it means that local market and global market needs to be sizable. The other thing is that you need to build a product that can stand up and scale, and a product that addresses the problems the market and the companies have. If you build the best product, but it doesn't really address the problems the market has, then you will have an issue. And the final thing is sell. It's such an undervalued skill. And we look down at people who are good at selling. But we've just been through a process with one of our entrepreneurs who can sell anything. And he is 1 in a million. And he can sell the dream to employees. So he can actually attract talent without having anything. He can sell to entrepreneurs. And when the first time I met him, he just came in. He didn't even pitch the round. He started pitching the next round, because this round is already done. And the last thing he said before he went out of the room, remember, Dennis, remember, Kjartan, this is the tip of the iceberg. So it means we would just said, listen, that guy, we backed him twice now, and if he moves to North Korea, we'll back him there as well.
Okay, so we're going to do a roving mic. So if we move that way, then the mic will move. Can I give it to you, Stephanie?
My question picks up, Simon, on your bad 3i experience in the therapy session. I think you need around that. It's very much in your interest as a VC, isn't it, to, as you said, to get the best deal you can. And as I understand it, that means buying in as late as you can in the process so that your returns become quicker. As an entrepreneur, runway is the all-important issue, and the shorter the runway becomes, the less bargaining position you've got on valuation. How do you straddle that dilemma?
Yeah, I mean, you are right, but we are building a partnership with the entrepreneur. We don't see any benefit from the entrepreneur struggling and not having cash to pay the necessary expenses or salaries, etc. And it's not when we invest that's going to determine whether it becomes a success. It's the actual company, the product, and what they're going for, and how we can add value in order to get past the next hurdles and the next hurdles and the next hurdles. So by having that approach, and I know there are people amongst my peers who are trying to do that, and we just had a deal now where really impressed with the founders. They were basically, it's crisis software. And we went through a process with them, and then we came to the investment discussions, and they'd gone through seed investment, and the angel investors had taken 60% of the company. We would invest, and we would probably dilute another 20, but then the founders would be left with 20% of the company, and they still had 3 rounds to go. So, and that's stranded. And we said, you got to fix your angel investments because they have taken advantage of you in pure sort of percentage basis. And that will not benefit the angel investors nor the founders for the next round. So they have two choices. They reconfigure the cap table, or they grow at this pace. I hope that answers your question.
Now, Jess, you had a question. Jessica here, please.
I'm just quite interested in the fact that there's a culture around entrepreneurship and leadership, and we're saying that's, you know, very much encouraged, but the company is not only its leader, it's also its team. So what do you do to inspire and recruit and keep followers?
So your question is, how do you maintain the culture and continue building the culture? We're discussing that all the time, and it's probably the hardest thing to do, and particularly if you want to change it. We have companies in our portfolio has been very good at building culture, and it comes from leadership. It comes from the ability to recruit people who can actually continue building that culture. What's the onboarding like of new employees? And then you have the companies that have a rotten culture. None of our companies have that, of course, but we are struggling with some of the companies that do not have what we perceive as the right culture. And it comes from leadership, and it's hard to change that direction.
So who is next? Lara. Cam, let me know if there are any questions on that.
Hi. I'm curious about the 5% of women entrepreneurs that you have on your team, and I don't think that that's an unusual number at all. Tiny percentage of VC funding goes to women entrepreneurs from other marginalized communities. And so I guess I'm wondering what you're doing to look at growing that, and then what we can all be doing to look at helping that shift and change.
So just explain Rising Tide, which is your company.
My company's Tide Risers,
Tide Risers,
and we're a community of women leaders. And it's basically a community based on this culture of lifting up one another and helping to make women more visible. So I think this is partly where my conversation is coming from here, is that, I think a lot of the problem is around network and visibility. And a lot of the people who are looking for VC funding just aren't breaking into the communities that they need to be in. So I'm curious about your perspective on that.
First, how many female CEOs do we have? Is it 2?
Maybe about 20% female senior.
Okay. Oh yeah. So beyond the CEO, the founder leadership is at 20%. So still, it's probably not enough. So I'll address what we do first. So we have no bias in our company. It doesn't matter the background, where they've been, the color, the gender, etc. So we have no bias. We want to basically exactly. We used to come centuries ago doing other things, but now we come here to invest. So no bias. So we're trying to invite people who want to have a dialogue with us to come in and basically explain who they are, what they're trying to build, and how we can help. Aside, we are building an advisory council, and we are trying to have a larger representation of women, because that's probably one of the ways we will recruit more female entrepreneurs. And I've joined the advisory board of a group that is looking to encourage and run cohorts of female entrepreneurs. So I will be advising or giving mentorship to that group. But it is a super complex problem or challenge you're outlining, and I'm meeting this afternoon with one of the top female entrepreneurs in this country, and to discuss exactly that. And we want to work more closely with those leading lights, because that will encourage also the next generation of female entrepreneurs to come. So, but we're looking for talent, and talent, they come in all shapes and forms, and that is the main thing.
So do you have a rough anecdotal idea of those 2,000 to 3,000 submissions? How many are led by women?
We probably haven't done the analysis, but it's probably 5%, I would guess.
So,
Yeah.
But also maybe planning, it's a matter of business relations. Unfortunately, those people in your traffic, it's all backed by the network you have. I think that makes quite a lot of that.
Sorry, I was saying that it's ultimately a network type of business, and to build that network takes a long time. It has taken Europe 20 years to build entrepreneurship network. I think the female found a network will take another, hopefully shorter time scales as things progress, but it's just it's natural progression.
so
It will change for sure.
Tina, you're starting a business.
And I'm obviously not young, but I'm very young in the entrepreneurial business. I come from a massive corporate career. So I'm nervous. Something you just said really triggered. You said it's all about sell, sell, sell. Women very rarely are good at the sell, sell, sell. I'm abominable at it. I'm really good when someone opens the door. Like if you said to me, Fred over there wants to speak to you, apparently I'm a really good deal closer because we come across with a genuineness that is usually real. Women are amazing team builders. And I've done a lot of turnarounds in the last 10 years and doing private equity for a high net worth individual. Unfortunately, often being brought in at third round stage, and they've all gone through the male ego stage. And it is really, really hard to have the confidence to even talk to you now because people have always undervalued this need for team. And I'd love to know the statistics on how many co-founders are still the CEO of that business that was successful. Very few. Because the ego that it takes to have that idea, and I'm not underselling it because I'm not an ideas person, is enormous. The ability to empower, engage, and enable is virtually impossible. And the ego to be able to step aside to let that next generation come through is what I find really has inhibited the success of some amazing products that I've seen on the garbage tip. So I don't know, I just felt the need to comment because I think it's really hard for females, and as I said, I'm old and I've been around a long time and I've had a very senior career, but it's still really, really hard to have the confidence to sell. Like just at the moment, we've got an amazing product that actually doesn't need much investment, but my God, it needs help with scaling up against the big boys. Because if I was still at Merrill Lynch, I know I'd be wiping the floor with this product, but I haven't got that team anymore, you know? And it's the confidence to talk to someone about something that's a really simple idea that actually doesn't need much money, but it needs scaling support. And I don't know, I just drop in that in.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. I think we've got time for one more question. So we're going to Bea and Lee, maybe if we've got time. Bea?
I was just going to ask, do you think there's a link between the fact that we're over-investing too early on, which I think we were touching on earlier, that people are kind of, I feel like companies are so often measured by the investment they have. We look at that first rather than the product or the team or the fact that they might be, you know, there are companies that are bootstrapped but selling and growing. And is there a link between that and this gender issue, which is that like if we're having to get that investment early on, that women are less likely to be, you know, the thing we say that women don't apply for the job if they don't have every single thing on the list, but men will apply for the job if they've got 3. So at that early stage, men are in the room selling this thing that they might not actually have really solid proof of concept over, but women are waiting. Is that making sense? So there's a link there, maybe.
I don't know if I really understood whether this was a comment on investing early or was a comment on the gender gap. Yeah, so if I do a very general comment on your first question or comment, we always say the best way of building a company is to get your product into the customer, get cash from the customer into the company. That's the best way.
Yeah.
If they they have a development time that don't enable them to do that, they need people like us. Or they want to scale it faster, so they can sell faster, more people. They need people like us. But always sales is the best sort of way of building your company. And then comes to the sort of the gender discussion here, and it's super complex, and it's due with personality, with self-esteem, with ability to take that leap. Women are probably thinking too much about whether to do stuff. I mean, I live in a marriage, I know that, and while men, they just said, yeah, let's just go for it. I mean, I'm not ticking the boxes, but we don't need entrepreneurs who tick all the boxes, because no one does that. So we say we have the best job in the world. We get to deal with the smartest people in the world, but they are 60–70% there in terms of the full package. Can we add those remaining percentages? And that doesn't matter whether they're men or women, or they are from Timbuktu, or they are basically handicapped or whatever. We just want the best brains who can build the next generation of world-class companies. Because if we do that and help them, we've done our job. And that's why we will always encourage women, particularly women with those world-class skills, to come forward and come and talk to us.
Yeah.
But we're not going to give them any free favors just because they're women.
No, of course. I guess it seems more though that it's about changing the way entrepreneurship or the wider industry, how it works, rather than, it's not singular to you guys, right? So it's about how we allow more women to be coming forward, because obviously you need to just deal with the talent that lands on your doorstep, but the ratio is off at that stage.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very low percentage of female entrepreneurs who get funding, and hopefully that will change.
Yeah.
But mentality amongst the investor community, the help that women are getting in terms of support, etc. There are also certain countries that are set up to support female entrepreneurs. And I come from a region where every female should be an entrepreneur, because they have all the support network they can need. So, yeah.
Lee, can I apologize? Because I'm a stickler for time and it's 9:30. So I want to thank Kjartan very much indeed for today. And before you applaud, thank you very much to Vienna as well for your support today. Thank you, Elke, and the team there. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all next month.